Hello, welcome to Ek Talk with Will Echeverria. Would you like to read about a story that delves deep into the unknown of this world? If so, then Under a Lucky Star by Roy Chapman Williams is the one for you. This book was written in 1984 by Roy Chapman Williams, but he lived from 1884 to 1960. So this book was published before he died, so he was able to see it flourish through the public and as people could read more about him. And so this book focuses on basically the midlife of Roy and his great expeditions into the Gobi. It starts off with him working in a museum and studying these fossils, but he doesn't feel like this is enough for him, and he wants to do more with his scientific studies. So he decides to move to China, where he becomes a whaler and lives on a boat with a man. And at first, seeing these whales killed, he feels bad for these whales because he doesn't feel like it's fair to them. But as his job goes on, he starts to understand that this is how some people have to live, and that if he is to attain his dream, then this is what he's going to have to do. But he only does this for a few short months, as then he moves to China. He moves completely into China with a few of his explorers. None of them are completely characterized, and Roy is really the only person who is talked about, save for his wife in the late goings of his years. And so it talks about his expedition into the Gobi Desert, his multiple expeditions into the Gobi Desert, as he finds dinosaur fossils. He reaches global stardom, and his celebrity status doesn't really affect him because he's always doing this for the scientific studies, and he wants to do something with his life, and he wants scientists to be able to study his work in a museum. And so that's one of the main themes of the story is his humility, because he never gets sidetracked with his celebrity status, but also the passion he shows as he leaves everything he has in America to move to China to pursue his dream to be an archaeologist. And once he finds these dinosaur fossils, he feels that that's enough. And so he moves back to America with his wife, and he settles down in Connecticut. And so the main subject of the story is Roy's adventure through the Gobi Desert and in China. But the main purpose is to show how he overcomes his struggles. For example, the many sandstorms, the intense heat, the super cold of the winter in the desert, and also the bandits and the political unrest of China at the time, which is one of the main aspects of the story, was the political unrest. And here's an excerpt about the political unrest. The years 1926 to 1927 marked a turning point in the history of modern China. It was vitally important, too, in the fortunes of the Central Asiatic expedition. Anti-foreignism burst into flame out of the still smoldering fires of the Boxer Rebellion of 1900. So this is showing how China's coming off a past war and how it's still not at its major strength. So at this point, the people of China, they see an American come in, and they don't feel quite sure about it because they don't feel that an American should be living in China. And at this point, also the Chinese government is worried about a possible American attack to take over their lands because they are not at full strength. And as we move along in the passage, we read, the Chinese eventually moved on Shanghai with the avowed intention of taking that city, ousting the foreigners and claiming the international settlement for the Chinese. Flushed by their unexpected success in regaining the Hankow concession, the Chinese decided that the powers would not use force and they could drive all foreigners out of the country. So this is showing that Roy has a certain time period that he needs in this time because he doesn't know when the Japanese are going to invade, and he doesn't want the Japanese to win and for him to be exiled out of the country back to America, because then all of his efforts will be for naught. So he doesn't want to come all this way to basically accomplish nothing. So, and also this brings an intensity to the tone, and it shows that Roy is not just at odds with himself and with nature, but also with the governments of China and Japan as they are going through a time of certain turmoil. But then another main aspect of the story is the imagery that really describes the landscape and helps the readers to understand better the conditions that Roy had to live in while he lived in the Gobi. We went through the desolation of a sun-parched desert from the well of the mountain waters 400 miles to the east. For a year there had been no rain. We followed the tracks of our own motor cars made 10 months before. The scanty vegetation lay brown and shriveled by the pitiless sun. White rims of alkali marked the beds of former ponds. The desert swam in maddening, dancing mirage that mirrored reedy lakes and cool, forested islets where we knew there was only sand. Mile after mile we traveled without seeing a living thing save scurrying spotted lizards and the long-tailed gazelles that do not need to drink. The way was marked by the skeletons of camels and the bones of sheep. And the thing that pops out to me is the way was marked by skeletons of camels and the bones of sheep, which shows the underlying tone of death in the Gobi because of the intense heat and how things come here most likely will die. And also the scanty vegetation lay brown and shriveled by the pitiless sun. And this is showing that things that are attempting to live in the Gobi at this point are not usually successful. You know, this vegetation lay brown and shriveled. That means that it is not going well and it will most likely die. So it's saying that as Roy is living in the Gobi Desert, it's very difficult for him and his fellow explorers to survive just because of the harsh climate and the harsh times of living there. And so basically, in my opinion, the purpose of this book is to talk about how Roy overcomes his struggles in China and also in his expeditions in Central Asia. And it just shows how he attains his dream and he will do whatever it takes to attain this dream. My evaluation of the book is it starts off slow, I'm not going to lie, but as the book moves farther and farther into the story, it starts to pick up and it shows how Roy is becoming more intent on fulfilling his dream, and it makes the reader want to read more and more just because the tone is so intense. And I would recommend this book to someone who wants to read about an expedition, an exploration, if you will, into a place that is not yet known, for someone to fulfill their dream and to accomplish what they have always wanted to. And with that, good night, and I hope that you all enjoy this book if you choose to read it. This is Will Echeverria, and I'll see you next time.